Hey guys, welcome to our SoulFam Podcast, where I interview space holders from all over the world. I'm your host. My name is Karolina, and I'm the connection catalyst. I help spiritual entrepreneurs experience deeper connection with themselves, with others, and with the whole universe. Today on the show, we have Rossanita, the Warmi Spirit, a bridge between humanity and Mother Nature. Welcome to the show, Rossanita. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Carolina, for having me in your space and also in your podcast to share messages about nature. So thank you. Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm actually surrounded by nature now because I'm in Costa Rica at the moment. So I'm really feeling connected to the jungle and connected to Mother Nature. So I was thinking that it's a perfect time to speak to you because you are this bridge. And I feel like it's so important to talk about this because people sometimes can get lost in their, jobs and in their houses and in their, just crazy lives. So they might sometimes forget how important it is to come back to our natural states of being. So this is going to be a really beautiful conversation. I already can feel it. But let's start with a little bit of your backstory, because I know that you have really interesting lineage over there, and I would really love to hear your story and how you were brought up and how you this whole spirituality and Mother Nature theme was with you from the beginning, I would say, right? Because like you're brought up in this way. So I'm curious about your story, so please share with us.
Yes, my story. Wow. I need to write a book eventually, but it has a lot of beautiful connections. First, I would like to say, Ayim Punchan Kachum, which means in Quechua, good day to you all. I'm relearning how to remember my native language of Quechuan descent. So I was born in Peru, in Lima. From my dad's side, they're from the Andes. They're Quechua and Inca from my grandmother, and she's the one that raised me. From my mother's side, I hold a lineage from the Amazon. So, but I don't have a stronger connection with her because she basically abandoned me when I was 4 years old, and that's why I tend to tell people that was my first initiation in terms of learning the experiences of life that brings up a lot of challenges. But at the young age, you don't really know what all that means, you know? All you know is mommy and daddy are no longer there. My dad migrated to the United States at the same time when I was 4. I have an older sister and 2 younger brothers from the same parents. And my grandmother from the Andes flew back into the city to come and raise us because we had no parents. So I grew up with my grandmother up to the age of 9. And in that period of time, my grandmother did show us a little bit of her ways of our indigenous way or her way she connected with spirits. However, she never really had the time to explain to us, this is this or this is that. She was just doing it for herself because she was overwhelmed with the fact that she had to raise now another set of kids, because she had 5 kids of her own. They're already adults, and now she got 4 little babies to take care of. So she was just in the moment of doing. But during the weekend on Sunday, we would go to church, a very Catholic church, and my grandma will teach us how to basically pray to each statue. And as a young 4 or 5 year old little girl, for me it was kind of weird that we were praying to things that didn't even talk to us. You know, to me, I always been this curious little girl, like, but why? But why? You know, and to me it didn't make sense, but I respected it and I believed in God. Until this day I believe in God. And but also when the priest used to talk, it was boring as a little kid. And but he used to always say things about like, what my grandma doing in the house is wrong and that will lead you to hell. So there was this confusion between spirituality of your ancestors, of your grandmother, versus this religion new way that they brought into our communities. So with that in mind, I to me spirituality seemed very scary. I don't want to know because they say it's the devil's work. So I'm just gonna stick to the religion and God. So then when I moved to United States, I moved to New York. I started living with my father, and I remember there was 4 rules of life that my grandmother said to me. I don't know at what point, but I remember it. And she said, rule number 1, don't trust no one because everybody's going to stab you in the back. And I lived with that for a long time, and I had to heal from that because that was very hard. And then number 2, she said, save your money. Even if you have to bury it in the earth, save it for later. You're going to need it. Third, she said, get a good career and focus so you don't have to struggle, which I did. I got a good career. I became an MRI specialist in New York City, and I worked in the hospital of New York. So I also have a background in medicine in terms of radiology and doing a lot of human pictures of the body and knowing about different diseases. So I was very well educated on that. And I became very successful because grandmothers say that's the right way to achieve happiness. And then the last one, she said, make sure you don't kiss any boys because all they have is dirt and saliva. And I was like, what?
my
And then I was
God.
like, grandmother, you had 5 kids. How did you manage that without kissing my grandfather? And then she was hurt a lot by men from a young age. So one very interesting thing that I can share that my grandmother, which I'm speaking of, I was born on her birthday. So her and I, we shared the same birthday. And with that, at the young age, I didn't understand. I only knew that, me and my grandma, we have the same birthday. But later on in my spiritual journey, I learned what that actually meant, what responsibility that was for me. Well, then later on, as my very early 20s, the whole pain and trauma as a childhood, and we had other events in our life that had occurred to us as a whole family. Nobody ever really stopped us and asked us if we were okay, if our feelings were okay, or if the kids are okay. And it's kind of like how everybody in this society is being brought up. Nobody really takes the time to explain to certain things happen and we need to address it and we need to communicate it, we need to heal it. We didn't even know what healing is. You don't talk about that, especially in a lot of these kind of communities. You don't talk about that stuff. It's quiet. Like mental health, no, you don't talk about that. If nobody's crazy, you're crazy. Just be quiet, and stop crying. That's the word they like to use. So when I was older, I had my career, I had my nice car, I was trying to get a house in New York, and then it hit me. Something that basically my pain or my wounds caught up to me, and it just hit me in the face, and it was time to face it, but I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the support, I didn't even have the words because I never expressed how I felt. I didn't even know how to use my voice to express the pain that was coming from me, from my ancestors. And I just knew there was this heavy load that put me down in the floor. So I stopped eating. I became very depressed. I had to seek for help from medical support. And I remember just being in the hospital in the emergency room because I was withering away because of sadness, because of major depression. And I remember like my whole family praying, even my grandmother from Peru, trying to do video calls and saying, come back, you're here. And that's where my journey started with getting to know Mother Nature when I was in the brink of death and life. And me like just having no energy to continue with these experiences because I couldn't understand what was happening to me and nobody could tell me. And the doctors, they could say it's like just take another pill, go to a psychologist, go to this, but it wasn't working. And the therapists that I had unfortunately were not good. They were just like collecting basically plain payments every time I went. So I remember my aunt said to me one day, she said, snap out of it. Like, why are you always so sad and crying? And I didn't understand how to even process this. So I remember that's the point where I said, I need to make a choice. I can't live in this limbo, like where I just like one day I'm here, one day I'm there. I need to choose between life or death. So what does Rosanna want? And I remember picking up my phone and I sometimes the pop-ups come up like the YouTube pop-ups and this should suggest you a video. So I guess Spirit must have used the algorithm to send me a message because the message was watch this video for 20 minutes and it will change your life. And I was like, you're right. Yeah, right. I was so skeptical of me. I questioned everything. So when I said, and then Spirit in my head, like a voice said in my head, it's only 20 minutes. If you decide to die after that, then so do it, but at least watch it. And I was like, fine. I look at it, and I looked at it, and there was a talk by Earl Nightingale. He's dead, and he never meant to do a motivational speech. It was actually for his workers. And that speech clicked something in my mind, and I was like, whoa, what am I doing with myself? And then I was like, and then I looked outside. My aunt had a bunch of like there was no walls. There was only like a lot of windows, and the trees were dancing, by the wind. And I was like, what the hell is that? Like, what is this energy? And it kept telling me, Rosanna, don't be sad. And I said, oh shoot, now I lost it. I'm like, now I need to go back to the hospital because the priests are talking to me like this is not real. Right. So
That's
I was
funny.
like, really? Is it really talking to me? And it says, stop being sad, come outside. And it was so sunny and beautiful outside. And I said, why am I inside? So I looked up on my phone again, and another pop-up said, go hiking. And I was like, hiking? So I called my friend and I said, what are you doing next Sunday? And she's like, nothing. What are you doing? I was like, let's go hiking. And she's like, what the heck is hiking? I was like, I don't know. I think it's like walking in the woods or something, but I guess we let's do it. And then her and we decided to go hiking. And I made a promise to myself at that point that I would no longer sit in my house on Sundays. I would go hike every Sunday. And that's how my journey connecting with nature started, because of this energy that just somebody sent, well, Mother Nature sent this energy to wake me up. And I started hiking, and for 2 years religiously I would go and connect to God there, connect to plants. And it really helped my mind discover all these memories and release all this pain and release everything. But it didn't only help me. It actually, one friend invited another friend, and another friend invited another friend, and then it became like a hiking group. And then at one point I remember looking up in the mountain, and I looked behind me, and it was just not like one friend, there was like 50 people hiking with me, and it was like out of control. It was like a lot of people benefiting from my experiencing what I had started. And I started creating groups where people can connect with nature more, where we can do like just like offering and do mandalas and like just sing and share food together in nature. And a lot of people in New York, friends and colleagues, will come into this gathering that I would, create it. But it all started because I had this pain that I didn't understand, and nature became my therapist. It created a space where I can discover myself and discover this. And then at one point, nature told me to go back to Peru, to go back to get to know my ancestors, to go back to know my lineage, to go back and understand where I come from and what is my path from there moving forward, because it was a bigger message for me back home. And at first I was nervous because I don't like, yes, I am Peruvian, but I grew up a long time in New York, and now go back to square one where I don't know. I do have family here, but I wasn't connected to them because I didn't grow up with them. So for me, it was like scary. And also, of course, my family were so religious. And still to this point, a lot of them are so religious. So for me to tell them I'm going to connect with nature and my ancestors, they probably think either like I'm with the devil or like I'm crazy. Some of my family still think that way, unfortunately, but that's okay. So I didn't care, because I needed to find out what is this message that they want to tell me. So Mother Nature introduced me to the sacred plants, to her own plants, to her own tools that she had. She wanted me to know. And well, I can keep going, but there's so much to embellish in this story. But when I went back to Peru, it was maybe, I don't know, maybe 15, 13 years ago that I initiated my process with the main sacred plant that everybody talks about now. It's so fancy now, right? It's such a, I don't know, fashion statement trend now, which is so sad to say. Mother Ayahuasca, with all respect, I speak on behalf of her and speak of her name publicly. She basically, I sat with her the first time, and for me, it was such a powerful experience that I couldn't even sit in the second ceremony. I needed a year to integrate one little word that she said to me, or one little phrase that she shared with me. It took me a whole year, because I couldn't understand how can an element or a plant know my whole life? Like, who gave you the right? I was in this ego trip, like, who gave you the right to be in my brain and know my whole secrets? Nobody knows my pain. Nobody knows my darkness. For somebody to know my darkness, I felt like naked. And somebody knows, now I have to face it, because sometimes when nobody knows, and you feel not accountable for. But now the plant knew my pain, knew my real life, knew my real self. So now I needed to face it. So it took me a year, and I went back the second time, and that's when I met my ancestors and another ceremony, and they showed up and they told me like why I was born on the day that my grandmother was born, and what was my role. And one thing that I can share, because they said so many things and some of them are just for me, and one thing that I could share in public, they said to me, if you don't go back and relearn about the language, the culture, the healing, the spirituality, the connection with earth, the lineage that your grandmother carries, and the medicine and all the connection that your grandmother carries will die when she dies, if you don't reignite the fire again in your family, because everybody has moved to the north and they're now become quote unquote what they call it modernized, and they become a different people. But if you don't take this in responsibility serious and connect back to the earth, your whole history, at least in your lineage, will be wiped out. And
Wow.
I was like, yeah, and it was very powerful. And I was, at first I was like, oh, it was nice to meet you, ancestors. Never
See
used the
ya.
word, yeah, I never used that word before. And I was like, that was cute, your story and your message. That's very powerful. I honor it. But you guys got the wrong girl. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you can find another family member that lives in Cusco, that lives in the Andes, that's able to hold this kind of like message and space and journey and path. I was like, I'm going back to Peru because I'm from New York now. You know, I mean, I'm going back to New York because I'm from New York. So I left, but when nature calls, and nature calls you to hold this kind of big responsibility, you cannot run away. There will be signs everywhere. There will be messages from people that you don't even know. It will appear everywhere, songs, music. It was just like, it was almost like, what? Enough. It made it impossible to live my life. Even the doctors would be like Pachamama. And I was like, what in the world is these doctors that are westernized talking about Mother Nature? It was just so vivid. I couldn't ignore it. So I had to obviously pay attention and go back and start relearning my culture. And it wasn't that I didn't want to, it was that I felt perhaps not good enough. Perhaps I felt not well equipped enough. Perhaps I felt scared that everybody's going to judge me, my family's going to shun me, people would turn their backs at me. And also I felt incapable because I also grew up like, like pushed down, like, no, don't talk, shut up, your voice doesn't matter, so all that. It wasn't that I didn't believe in my culture. It was just like I felt probably not the best person to hold this kind of responsibility in my
Mhm.
mind. So it was all these programs that disempower you, that I grew up in this system, that I felt Rosana looks like an indigenous woman and she has no voice, and that's it. She doesn't matter because she doesn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. She just speaks with an accent, so she doesn't matter. So that mentality I grew up with. So when my ancestors gave me that responsibility, I was like, I can't do it. I'm just Rosana. And they were like, yes, that's why we want you, because you're just Rosana. And that's how my journey started. So, I mean, I could go on forever, but I'm gonna have you to ask me more questions. I don't know. So
I'm
that's how
loving
I went
this
back.
though. I'm loving this story. I want to go on because I'm like so curious about the rest. Like, what kind of plans have you started? And like, was the initiation difficult? Like, did you have a lot of steps that were like challenging? And I mean, I can imagine that holding the responsibility of like, okay, if you don't do anything about it, your lineage will like lose its wisdom. And it's like, what the hell, guys? Just don't put it all on me. It's like, what the hell? So I could imagine how
Yeah.
challenging it was for you. It's like, oh my God, it's like you just want to be a New York girl, and then nope, you just need to go back, work with plant medicine. But it's beautiful. I feel like it's beautiful because you're not going to avoid what your soul's path is and what you're here to do. Like, as you said, it's like the universe will bring you so many signs, so many things that at some point you're just going to be like, all right, I give up trying to do things based on your mind, and I'm just going to do things based on my heart. And I'm sure that in your heart you kind of knew that you can do it, but then in in your mind there would be showing up all these programs, right? All these like, oh, you're not enough for this, oh, you're no one, oh, whatever. But if we actually listen to our heart, we know that what is the right thing to do. So I'm happy that you came back and happy that you started doing this. But yeah, I'm curious about like what was the path for you? Was there like a challenging initiation, or was it like just a lot of experience you needed to gain? Like how did it unfold for you?
Yeah, so at the beginning, of course, I didn't tell my family what I was doing in Peru, and I sat with grandmother. I didn't even tell nobody. I didn't tell nobody for years, for maybe 3-4 years, that I was already communing with the plant, drinking the plant. And at the very beginning, it was a lot of shadow work, a lot of realization of what had occurred to me, what had happened in my family lineage, a lot of sexual abuse, a lot of abuse from men, a lot of like just the whole colonization and like our culture being almost like, not wiped out completely, because at least we, the Andean people, we still hold our culture very strong here in the Andes, and we're going to, and we'll continue. But a lot of oppression has happened, and then we still continually have struggles here with the communities. So holding that, and it was a lot of it was my first ceremonies with, at least I can speak of my experience with ayahuasca, was a lot of crying, a lot of shedding, a lot of realizing, a lot of forgiving, of course, of forgiving the abandonment of my mother. So yes, there was a lot of shadow work. You can't be your real self unless you integrate those parts that also are part of you, the shadow part, the dark side. People just think like, oh, I'm going to drink medicine, it's going to fix my life, and then I'm just going to fly high in the astral world. No, it doesn't work like that. It's a lot of work, first internal and personal work. And I didn't tell nobody, because honestly, like, and not everything needs to be publicized. Like for me to speak about ayahuasca, it took a long time, because one, because I didn't understand it, because I felt it was too personal, and three, because it was out of respect for this element that was gifting me like a lot of support. But also ayahuasca was like, sweetie, I am not gonna fix your life. Like, you're gonna fix it. You're gonna need to go back and address all your wounds. You're gonna need to go find your mom and get to know your mom. And for me, that was a very, very a big initiation, because I didn't know my mom. She left me when I was 4. Now I'm an adult. Like, I don't. The woman Rosanna doesn't need it. She's like a well-made woman, successful. She has a career. But then I learned about the inner child wound. The little girl Rosanna, she was still feeling abandoned. She was still feeling, I have no mom. The only mom I know is probably Mother Earth, because also Rosanna, the woman, she also forgot about her, and she was just trying to live and make a career and trying to survive and whatever her grandmother told her. But everybody forgot about Rosanita that lives inside of her, and she was struggling. That's what she was holding on to, that big pain of abandonment. But I didn't realize that until Mother Nature and ayahuasca, through ayahuasca, told me, like, you need to heal that little person that lives inside of you. And I was like, and then I met another beautiful plant, which we call it wachuma, which is the sacred cactus, the grandfather, the one that connects us to our heart. And he's the one that introduced me to Rosanita. And my first experience, if I can share on behalf, I'm speaking with the plantita because it's here, the plant is here. And he showed me, basically, I was in my journey and I was in the river, and I saw the rocks, the elements of the rocks were crying, like this sadness. And I looked at the rocks and I'm like, what's wrong with these rocks? And I felt this sadness. But then in that appears this little girl, like this 4-year-old girl comes out, and she looks at me and she's crying. And then I look at her and it's me. It's like it's the little me. And then I look at her and I say, stop crying. Why are you crying? And she starts crying even more. And I realized how much pain she was holding. And, this beautiful plant allowed me to see in this vision how much of pain I was carrying, that I didn't even tap into it, because I was so in the process of doing it, not really connecting to my inner spirit. So yes, it was such a painful layers of initiation. It was initiation after initiation. I felt like I'm like going into a roller coaster, like, and it's not ending. It's not ending, because it was so much deep work. And I learned in being birthed into somebody else's birthday, also you hold their blessings and their medicine but you also hold their pains and their traumas. So I wasn't just holding my own stuff that had happened to me in this human experience, but I also was holding my grandmother's stuff, what she had experienced, all the stuff that she had experienced, abuse and like just pushed down because she only spoke Quechua and she didn't speak Spanish. And then when she moved to the city, she was experienced racism and abuse and just like belittled by other people that were more of a mestizo descent coming from Spain, and all that pain. I felt it, and I was like, how do I channel this and make this something that I could like live with, and not feel this so much pain. So these elements of these plants, and then I met the little children's. We call the little children's the sacred mushrooms, because for us, the mushrooms, they're little elves. The little elves works on the mushrooms and they make them grow. So we call them the children's. So when I met them, it was a whole support system. I met the plants really helped me to tap into this stuff. But it wasn't just the plants, it was everything. For me, it was also just going hiking up into the sacred apus here. There we call them. Apus means the spirit that lives inside each mountain. So each mountain has a spirit, and each spirit has a name. So we here, for us, it's not just the dirt, it's not just the plant, it's not just the sun. It's something that is alive and it has energy and it has a spirit. So we respect that, and that's how our culture has been able to survive. And even like when the Spaniards in colonialism came here, they knew that if they disconnect us from Mother Nature, they would win, because our power came from Mother Nature because of that connection that we had, because of that trust that we had. So for me to regain that power within myself, I had to do the same thing that my ancestors did, connect back to Mother Nature. And how do I do that? A girl that grew up in New York and had privileges of like opening the faucet and watering your garden, or having everything so instant, and it was for me relearning that. And even now as an adult, like coming back, and now I live full-time here in the Andes. I am here. I also opened up a center called Apu Healing Center. But even when I came here, Mother Nature told me, like, you, because I was so programmed to think everything has to happen like this, and everything has to be a hustle, and everything has to be a struggle, and coming back here, Mother Nature said, you grew up in a made up society, in a made up environment made by humans that are operating from greed, that are operating from consumerism, that are operating from competitiveness. I think that's how you say it. I don't know. But basically, you're just competing in cutthroat kitchen. Like, you survive or I survive, I win and you don't. It is so harsh to live in that kind of environment. And even in the hospital systems of New York, that's how they operate. We have to beat the other hospital. We have to beat the number of patients of last month. It's all about a business. It's not humane anymore. So coming back and living in the land, it taught me, like, before you in a timeline of this egotistic, self-centered human mind, but now you are in a collective space where it's not about just what Rosanna wants, it's what works for the whole community. We share water from the river to water our garden. Everybody has a time when we have to grab the water from the river to water our garden, and all this, like, relearning how to live in the timeline with nature. It's not a timeline where our ego self. So all that, yes, it was because I had to break down these patterns, these programs that I had acquired in my experience, and then break them down and understand that that was not healthy, and that only created so much anxiety and so much depression. And now I have so much compassion for my colleagues and family that live still in these kind of areas, and people around the world that live in the city that think like the real life is what is that 9 to 5 hustle and bustle, competitive, and then on the weekends you just get wasted and just drink, and they still feel empty, and it's like a cycle that it never ends. At least I have the blessing and the opportunity to have experience. Was this easy to step out of this society? No, it wasn't easy. It was hard because everybody thought at one point I'm crazy. Like, who talks to spirit? But I knew this path of self-empowerment, self-discovery, sometimes you have to walk at it alone, but you have to stay true to yourself, but it also has so many beautiful rewards. Like now I'm me, and I'm able to live the way I want to. And I pray that every time I look outside, I can see the trees and the mountains, and I do it now. I'm living with the trees, I'm living with the mountains. And yes, every day is I have to break this pattern still in my head to this day, because like I said, the evolution of shifting or of evolving, it will never end. Challenges in life will never end, because if it ends, that means you're dead, you know. So it's always evolving and it's always changing. For me, now my medicine and my goal is to bring this knowledge that I have experienced in my life, but also share it to others, because I've been there. I was depressed, I was in the hospital, and not to say that the system that we have created, technologies, has brought beautiful things, and also medicine is necessary, because if you have a head trauma, you're going to go to a surgeon to operate you. You're not going to come here and us going to, perhaps we might do something, but if we have this accessibility, why not use it? Obviously, for other things, like maybe perhaps addiction or some craziness that you need continuous in medication. Some of the medications are only treating the system, the symptoms, and not the actual cause of the problem. And sometimes it's not even related to the physical, but actually the emotional and the spiritual side that is eating. Everything is energy. So if you're sick, it's probably not from the physical thing. It's probably from the traumas that you never dealt with. Sometimes the traumas are stored in your body, and it manifests as cancer. They manifest as all this illness that we have now. So our biggest, I guess, savior or thing is earth, is connecting back to where we came from. In society, in this new world, they know that if we connect to earth, we are powerful. We know all the secrets. Like, we don't have to depend on a system that's corrupted. But now we live in this system. So some people think, oh yeah, when I become woke or spiritual, that now I'm going to create this like community outside and I'm going to forget about it. No, we don't forget about it, because our work is going back there. We all are living in this earth, and we cannot escape from it. What we have to do is we have to bring awareness into what is happening and help others that are still in there. That's how we're going to change the system, not by escaping it and avoiding it. And people say, well, we shouldn't talk about politics or religion because that's like not spiritual enough. We live in a world that is run by politics and run by religion. Guess what? We have to face it. In order for us to create a change, we have to become educated and get our people with the spiritual mind, with this love that everybody in the spiritual community talks about, love and light. Love and light is seeing the people that are in there, the people that are struggling, the communities that they need. The governments right now are running our system. Guess where we need to go? We need to go in there and do the work and help other people and bring these messages to the earth. Well, anyways, for me, this is very passionate. For me, it's not spiritual bypassing or avoiding or escaping into like a new, nice, beautiful ecosystem in Costa Rica or Peru or Bali and just creating. No, it's speaking up. Like, I have a voice now, and the plants speak through me, and right now they are speaking through me, and they want people to know that all of us, once we know the truth, share it with others. That's what it means. Share with others. Come back and tell people about what it is to have a beautiful experience connected to Mother Earth, what it is to be empowered, what it is to be connected to God Himself, because all of us are God. All of us have the powerful energy from God. Like, even in the Bible, it says we were created in the image of God. Guess what God is? God is a creator. So we can create a new reality. Perhaps I won't see it in my lifetime, but I do pray. I do pray that my children in the future, they will be able to live how my ancestors used to live, in this beautiful alignment environment with nature. So that's what I do, and that's why perhaps people see me on Instagram dancing, because I experience the joy of nature. I experience the love of nature, but I just don't talk about it anymore, because for a while I lived in New York and I spoke about it, but now I'm learning to be about it. I'm learning to see how the water system grows here, how the avocados tree work, and even seeing an avocado tree grow. it to me it's like, wow, everything takes time. Nothing is like this. It's all made up. If it's so instant, it's made up, because nature has this time, its season, and its plan. So that's what I can share for now.
Whoa,
Yeah.
I love how passionate you are about this. And I just love the channeling that is just divine channeling that is going through you. But that brings me to this question, like, how can people do this when they live in these concrete jungles as New York City or other places? Like, how can they reconnect to nature? Because maybe, you know, it's more challenging for them to, let's say, find time to even go to nature, or to just find places, or to even just motivate themselves. Like, what are your ways when you were in New York City to reconnect and to actually hold this and maintain this relationship with Mother Nature?
Yeah, at the beginning was very difficult, because when I was brought into the awareness that I felt happier with nature. However, I was still working a lot of hours, double shift in the city. And in the city, perhaps I saw one or two trees like around me, and there was not a lot of trees. And the nearest nature, I would have to drive 2 to 3 hours to get to it. So it was sometimes it was difficult. However, I started developing different little small practices. In the beginning, I was like, I don't even know how to meditate. And, and you Google meditation in YouTube, and you see like hours of people just sitting like a monk. And for me, it wasn't working. For me, I would fall asleep. I thought it was boring. I just, for me, I didn't really understand it. But little practices even in your house. Okay, so for us in our culture, like building an altar space is basically you're creating a portal to connect to some higher source, and whatever you want to connect. If you call it God, if you call it Mother Nature, if you call it the universe or Gaia, whatever you want to call it, create a space where you can connect to that. And at the beginning, trust me, you're gonna feel like, what am I doing? This is stupid. Like, what is this? So for I said, just like build a maybe like a little what is that called? A little altar,
Altar?
a little cloth, like just put it there. Yeah, like a little candle in the middle, and maybe a stone, or maybe like a leaf. I don't know, something that you can relate to, and just start talking to yourself, to your higher self, and just like sit there, even just observe the candle for 10 minutes without like trying to think about something, and just like look at the candle for 10 minutes, and like start establishing a practice where you have quiet time. Quiet time is the best time to get to know yourself, because we are so distracted in this like fast pace, like go go go. It is, and that's how we want, the that's how society wants it to be, for us to be distracted, so we are powerless, because now we don't even hear our own thoughts. And sometimes when we want to hear our own thoughts, like we don't even have the space for that, because we're busy working. But if you start like doing these little practices, okay, let's say you don't have anywhere there's no nature. So you can build a little space in your house, even in your room. Just build that, buy yourself a little candle, sit there and just watch the candle for like 10 minutes, or maybe 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes. Just sit there and start doing that. And perhaps after that, maybe say 5 things you're grateful for. You must be grateful for something. You're alive, so that's one. You're breathing, that's two. You have food, that's three. You have a roof over your head, that's four. You have a family, that's five. There you go. So with that practice of observing gratitude, I think those simplest things will connect you to whatever is it that you call higher source or God, you know, and just start building that consistency. And building a relationship with something is key. Even when you're dating somebody, if you don't check up on them, or if you're not consistent, the love of the even that connection is lost. The same thing with Mother Nature, same thing with God, same thing with yourself. If you don't connect with it consistently, it loses its power. So the same thing, I would say, just build a little small altar for yourself in your space, in your house, in your city, whatever apartment, and just do that for 5 minutes and establish. Either they say that the most vulnerable or the most powerful times in our day is when we wake up and when we're about to fall asleep, because our brain patterns changes. And I believe it's in a, is it a delta or theta, but don't quote me on that. But one of the waves that are very powerful, and that's when you can connect to you subconscious, and your subconscious is the one that is running everything, your daily practices. So if you establish a gratitude, or maybe perhaps something that you want to create in those moments, so it's very for me, It's important to meditate either at night. In the morning, I usually do a gratitude, and in the night, I say, okay, tomorrow is going to be a great day, or something magical will happen to me. Like establish a mantra that it helps me. But they're like simple practices. They're not like I don't have to go to a shaman to tell me something. No, it's like I can do that on my own by myself. And if you do see a tree, go touch it, touch it, something that is tangible. Sometimes as human want to feel, like we want to know, we want to see it, because that's how we are created. We are with this human mind. So if you do have a tree or rock or water, like touch it, like feel that it's actually a physical, like who cares if people think you're a weirdo? Like it doesn't matter, you're joining a whole bunch of people that we are connecting with nature. And sometimes in the city when I will walk, I will stop in front of a tree, the tree that in front of the hospital. I will stop and I would just look at it, and I would put my hands on it, and I would be just, give me your strength, because those plants, like those trees, they have such a powerful energy field that even just like by touching and being around it, it gives you that energy to you, and it changes the human DNA, and it's proven scientifically. You can search it, being around nature, walking around nature, even touching nature, it changes the energy field of the human. So, but you just like touching it, don't even have to do anything, just touch it, and just, it would change you. So those little things, there's ways, like they say, there's ways of us changing. In Spanish, there's a saying that says, if you want it, you will find a way. And if you don't really want it, you will find tons of excuses. And if you want to connect to yourself, if you want to get yourself out of this hole that you are, you will find a way, and nature will help you. God will help you. But if you really don't, then you won't. You will find a lot of excuses to be like, poor, miserable victim me, And yes, we all have experienced to some extent, some point of hurt and pain. It's just like, newsflash, we're humans and we're going to experience all these challenges and pain. It just comes with a package. It's like when you were birthed, you're like, here, this is your plan for the human. A lot of pain, a lot of, joy. It all comes with it. However, we do have a responsibility to heal ourselves. It's our responsibility, not somebody's responsibility, not a shaman's responsibility, not a curandero, some guru, or whatever you want to try. Don't give that power to them. And one of my goals here at the center that I want to empower people and to be like, find your medicine and heal yourself. I will hold space, but you need to figure out how to heal yourself, because you only know you. You only know what you went through. I didn't. I was not in your shoes. I only know what pain I felt, and I know how to fix it. You know how to fix yourself. So, yeah.
Beautiful. That's amazing. I could listen to you for hours more, but our time is up now. So I have one little question to you. If people love your content, or maybe they would like to come and see you in person, what's the best way to find more information about you?
Well, I am now currently living in the Andes of Peru, and my center is located in the Sacred Valley, and it's called APU, which is spelled APU, Healing Center. And we same thing. If you want to connect and check out the offerings that I do, it's www.apuhealingcenter.com, or also on Instagram is the same thing, Apu Healing Center. So you can look at the content. I'm always trying to educate people and also showing different practices of our Andean culture here. And yeah, you can send me a message or an email, and we can definitely connect here. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your beautiful wisdom flowing through you. I could just feel the divine flow throughout this whole conversation. I'm so grateful. So thank you for agreeing to be on this podcast, because seriously, you brought a lot of wisdom here today.
Thank you, Karolina. Gracias.